Hello everybody, it's me Hans from Project Lights Out, and this is the new live stream. Today is Sunday, 26th of August 2012, and my special guest today is Russ Tanner. And before he starts to talk, first I will make a little introduction about what is it that you know for the new people who just came by or who saw the post on Facebook and they don't know what is chemtrails. Okay, it's about chemtrails and beyond, because okay. I want to tell you why I am talking about this. Maybe you will ask if I'm a researcher or I'm a specialist or if I know everything about this. No, I'm just like you. I'm just like many people who found this on YouTube maybe or on Facebook, because many people are talking about this now. And with the time, I mean, when I started to see the first posts about chemtrails, I didn't know what it is. I thought that people are crazy because when I saw the first videos on YouTube, I thought of just a plane, just a contrail, because what is coming out is normally it's a contrail, and I couldn't no, I didn't put too much attention on this, and first I thought this is some crazy stuff. The people are just they don't know anything about air or about planes, so I didn't pay too much attention, and I continued with other things until months later. I found on my friends' walls on Facebook more and more videos about chemtrails, and I thought, oh, they fell into the trap and they think the same, or they believe in this and everything. So I was thinking, okay, when he's watching this, okay, give it a try, check out more the videos. What the hell is it, no? Okay, so I found more and more information, more videos, and then I really I got the moment where I was thinking, stop, there's something really interesting here, there's something wrong. And yeah, that's how I met also Russ Tanner, who will talk in some seconds, because this guy is really living on this subject, he's or on this topic. And when I go on Facebook, I think he never sleeps, because he's posting and posting and posting. He even has his own website of chemtrails. So there are really good researchers out there, and I'm so glad to have him as friend. And today I will give him this live stream, because he also has something new to tell us. And yeah, it will be very interesting. So welcome, Russ. You're live.
Well, Hans, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me back. It's my pleasure.
You are always welcome. Okay, so
Well,
yeah,
go ahead.
maybe
Go ahead.
introduce yourself to the audience, because maybe many people they don't know you. I know who you are, but give it a try, that the people also know more about you, what you're
Absolutely.
doing. Okay, it's your turn.
Absolutely. I was introduced to chemtrails because I lived in Jamestown, New York in 2005. It's not the first time I saw them, but I uh, lived in a house that overlooked the whole town of Jamestown. It's a very beautiful area. I love that area. In fact, I would still live there if it wasn't for chemtrails. And I worked from home, so I had a big view of the whole city and in the sky. And suddenly one day I saw these jets fly in the sky, crisscross for 3 hours, and then leave. And by the time they were gone, the whole sky was covered. This was my introduction to chemtrails. I've watched the sky all my life. When I was in elementary school and all through my life, I've been interested in flight. I took flight lessons. I have an airborne ranger in my family. Have we owned airplanes in our family? Always been into jets, planes. I used to collect pictures. I had over 1,000 pictures of jets and planes and all kinds of things to do with aviation.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew this wasn't normal. I've watched the sky all my life. I've traveled around the United States. I've flown a lot to every corner of the United States, and I've never seen a trail come out of a jet in my entire life. and all of a sudden these jets were coming. The big thing that really got me interested in it was that besides the fact that I hadn't seen it before, is that I can smell and taste chemtrails not just a little bit, but so strongly that it's overwhelming. And even as I sit here and speak, since 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 7 o'clock here in the Eastern time zone right now, but since 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they really turned it up. It's about 35% intensity. That's my own system of measuring intensity right now. And my sinuses are somewhat swollen up. By the time it gets up to 40 to 50% intensities, my sinuses are closed, and I'm in pain. My joints hurt. I have to take herbal supplements in order to remain functional. So that's a brief background of my history with chemtrails.
Okay. Yeah, in my case it was similar. I mean, I don't smell them by now, but I remember when I was a child, my mother gave me to like a Christmas present, telescope, you know, and people are using telescopes to watching the stars, but on the day, what are you watching on the day? So I watched the sun and I watched the planes. So I also remember because you were talking about the many years when you watch the sky and everything. I have a perfect memory, let's say, and I can remember how skies looked in the past because I love to make the observations to check the planes and you know they are so moving so fast with the telescope that you have to follow them, and I remember exactly how fast the contrast disappeared, and now they don't disappear so fast, and they not even disappear, they transform themselves to clouds, and this is not normal. I mean, in the past it was not like this. Even the skies were more dark blue, and now they're like milky blue, you know. I mean, it's totally a mess, totally different what you're seeing now. And I think now many people, the young people for example, they not even know the skies before because they were born much later, and for them it's of course normal. So when you see the skies and you see the chemtrails and the new clouds, let's say like this, maybe they think, okay, it's always there since I was a young boy or a young girl, and I'm still alive, so it doesn't harm it, I don't feel any problems, so what the hell, no? So this is what I think, that many people, young people for example, they don't believe in this because they until they don't find out some healthy issues, they think everything is fine. Also, most people believe in the mainstream media, and when they don't see anything against that, they think everything is okay. If there's a plane, it has to be okay, because if it would be bad, then there wouldn't be the plane doing all that mess on the sky, you know. So that's why many people are still critical about this, because they don't feel it yet. But you told us some minutes ago that you can smell them. Explain us how it feels, or how is everything like this? Okay.
It's horrible. The first time this happened to me was the first time that the jets appeared in the sky. And I know because I sat right next to the window, had a beautiful view. The sky was right there, and the first time they flew in, it was just obvious, as clear as day. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes for the particulates to reach our level, because that's about how long it takes for me to smell them. And when I smell them, the first experience that I had is it was like salty metal. It was very salty, but yet there was a strong, blunt, metallic taste to it as well. And I immediately started having inflammation. My heart began to hurt. Joints and muscles began to hurt. I would get a headache within just a few minutes. I would feel fatigued. My thoughts would start looping, and it would be hard for me to focus and concentrate. My business partner, Laura, she's not quite as sensitive as I am. She really wouldn't feel anything until I was in quite a bit of pain, you know, or after about 10 or 15 minutes. Then she'd say, yeah, I'm starting to get a headache, and I'm starting to feel fatigued. And then I had an employee at the time, and I asked him, I said, do you smell it? Do you feel anything? He's like, no, I don't smell or taste anything, and I feel fine. Yet for me, it always happened 20 to 30 minutes after they started spraying. It's been like that for, what has it been, 7 years now. It's always been the same. So there's no question in my mind what's going on. But some people just don't have the sensitivity to smell or taste them.
I believe that because many people are sensibility to or sensitive to certain things. For example, there are people they don't get disturbed if someone is smoking, and other people they are almost dying about that smoke. You know, when you smoke a cigarette, they say turn it off. I can't stand it anymore. You know, and other people they don't care. You know, so you have the for me it's like to say you have the gift. I feel sorry that you get hurted by this. I mean that it's affecting your health because a question I read in one of your posts on your website that you even were hospitalized or something like this about a heart attack. Is that true? Could you tell
Yes,
us?
it was. Early last year in March, I came home on a Sunday night and started having, they were spraying very hard. And for the previous 2 days, I wasn't able to wear my wet mask. In fact, here's my wet mask right here for those who are watching. This
Wow.
is basically a painter's mask from Home Depot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 2 washcloths that are wetted,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have peppermint oil on there, but they're wetted with water.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I hadn't been able to wear the wet mask for the previous 2 days. I have to wear that mask almost every waking minute of the day
Mm-hmm.
for me, otherwise I can't function. So I wasn't able to wear it for 2 days because I was in Bangor. I live about half an hour outside of Bangor, Maine, and uh, I was in town for 2 days, wasn't able to wear the mask, so I was exposed a lot to chemtrails during the weekend. So, and they were spraying real hard. So Sunday night, after having had 2 days of really hard exposure, I was just feeling horrible. And finally, what happened is my potassium levels had dropped so low that I had a heart attack. Called an ambulance and spent the next few days up until Thursday in the hospital. They verified that it was a heart attack because the T enzymes had been elevated, and they verified that my potassium was extremely low. In fact, the nurse came to my bed and goes, "Your potassium is low." Well, guess what? Barium, which is commonly believed to be in chemtrails,
Mm-hmm.
lowers potassium. In fact, barium is used to artificially induce heart attacks in laboratory animals, and yet this is being sprayed on us. So that's my experience with a chemtrail heart attack. Now, I take potassium every day. I also take taurine, which helps to maintain your magnesium and potassium in your heart muscle. Yeah, the Why in the World Are They Spraying came out just last week, I believe, and then What in the World Are They Spraying came
Uh-huh.
out last year.
Uh-huh.
Both produced by Michael Murphy, 1 hour plus documentaries that get into very good detail about what this is all about. Yeah, actually, governments killing people is much more common than people realize. In fact, it's all throughout history there have been governments who have killed their own people, and it's very
Exactly.
common.
Yep.
Um, the reason why I believe they're doing this is multi-purpose. I believe, first of all, they are controlling weather. There is, for people who are new to the subject, a lot of this stuff that I say is going to sound over your head, or it's going to sound, I shouldn't say over your head, but it's going to sound just a little too far out.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that people need to realize is that the technology that our government has is probably 30 to 40 years beyond what we know. I have friends in the military who can't tell me what they're doing, but they have said that we are doing things that will make science fiction look like child's play. They have said, look, think about the wildest things you've thought about in science fiction. It's beyond that. We are now doing things, and they can't tell me what it is, and they're not violating their contracts, but they're just letting me know.
Mm-hmm.
I also have another friend who is in electronics, and back in the 80s, he told me that in the early 70s, he was working, developing electronic projects at a somewhat classified level, and he had in the lab he was working in, there were drawers that were full of 486 and 386 microprocessors. Well, anybody who knows anything about computers, those processors didn't come out till the mid late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe, if I have my Actually, no, it could have been, I'm sorry, late 80s, I believe, is when the 386, 486s came out, or mid 80s. So basically, 10 years before they were available to the public, the military was not even at a high classified level, but at some mid classified level. They were using them. They had drawers. He literally said we had drawers full of them where they were just thrown in drawers,
Hmm.
and they were developing with them. So some of this stuff that we talk about may seem very advanced and maybe science fiction-ish, but I think that's part of the idea. Is the government has been pouring over 50% of the U.S. budget is private. We don't know where it goes. There's no accountability for this money, and I believe it's been going to develop very, very advanced technologies so they can do these things. Some of them involve chemtrails. So what's the purpose? I believe weather control is one of them. I believe population control is one of them, and this is all based on their own literature. This is not me saying this. They have written it in their own literature that they intend on controlling the population, reducing population, and they intend on doing it secretly under the guise of a different program. This is what they said, not what I'm saying. This was said 20 years ago. And so here we go with vaccines that have been found to have mycoplasma in there. We have all the deaths through Gulf War syndrome of our soldiers. And now we have a chemtrail program that is spraying poisons, and people are having heart attacks, low potassium issues, strokes, aneurysms. More people are getting cancer than I've ever known in my life. I've never seen anything like this. And I don't think there's any coincidence to it. I also think that they're doing other things where, for those who don't know about HARP, HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. And what that is there's actually a network of large, powerful devices around the world that transmit, some of them are called ionosphere heaters. They transmit RF energy up into the atmosphere, and they heat the ionosphere, and they can do a lot of things with this. They can steer the jet stream, which is involved in weather control. And that's, again, I'm not saying this. This is right from the patents that describe this object. They control the jet stream.
Okay.
That's one thing that HARP can do. They can also interfere with natural human thought processes, because if you have an ionized atmosphere, meaning if you have an atmosphere that has all of these particulates in it, then it actually becomes much more electromagnetically conductive. In other words, you can have a transmitter that's going to transmit a certain amount of energy, but if the atmosphere has tiny particles of metal in it, it actually transmits electromagnetic energy much more powerfully. This is exactly like water. You can go on YouTube and search, and you can see a video where they actually put a television underwater, and the television was still working. And the way that they can do that, the way that they do that is that the water that they use had no minerals in it. It had no minerals, no metals. It's completely distilled water. Now, I don't recommend anybody do this, because if you don't do it right, you can kill yourself. But that's how they can run the water, the television underwater without breaking.
Wow.
Now, in the same way with the air, the air, the more metal particles you have in the air, the more conductive it is to electromagnetic energy. And this is what HARP is all about. Some of these patents also talk about interfering with natural human thought processes, lowering IQ, also talks about inducing anger, inducing feelings, sexual feelings, inducing certain types of moods, increasing or decreasing appetite, and all be done by electromagnetic stimulation that has been mentioned in the patents that are related to these devices that already exist. So there's kind of a long answer, but there's a few of the reasons I think that chemtrails are being sprayed. I've been on several radio programs over the last couple of years, and I've always wanted to say so much, but there's always been limited time, and so I've never been able to get it all out, and even tonight I probably won't be able to say it all. But, you know, Hans, I feel like I was born for this issue, because I have a background that has prepared me with aeronautics, with electronics, with having extra sensitivities, with having mercury poisoning, and other things in my life have just made me feel as if I was born for this issue. Part of, I can't escape that. I almost feel like I have to do something about this. I feel like I would want to anyway, because they are ruining the soils, and they are ruining with chemtrails, they're inducing droughts. They're poisoning the soils. They're going to cause horrible catastrophes that I believe are going to begin within the next year, especially with agriculture. They're beginning already, but we're going to start feeling in them economically very soon.
Hmm.
So, getting back to the spiritual element of chemtrails, I really have always wanted to talk about what I really think is going on a deeper level. If you really want to understand what's going on, people are speculating all the time and they're talking about this, but what drives them? Why are they spraying themselves? Why are they spraying Washington D.C.? This is a question I hear just all the time, and I feel like I have some information that's going to be really helpful for people to understand this.
Hmm.
Um, First of all, you know that Mercury has been first of all the sign. Have you ever seen the staff of Mercury, Hans? Have you ever seen that?
I don't remember yet. You mean how it looks in the chemical tab? And
Well, kind of like the old Roman and Greek god Mercury.
uh-huh.
Mercury had a staff, and he had wings on the staff, and had the serpents crawling up the staff. Well, if you look at the modern staff of medicine, the symbol of pharmacology today, guess what it is? Or at least of medicine, it's the staff of Mercury.
Uh-huh.
And I find it very interesting. The more that I've studied this stuff, especially the spiritual side of this stuff,
Yep.
the more I've come to realize that the people who put mercury in amalgam fillings, which is a horrible idea. No sane scientist would ever put mercury in a dental filling.
Hmm.
Never. Never. It would never happen. They would never do it. In the volatile environment of your mouth, the mercury is going to break free and it's going to poison you over time. Yet, it was approved, it was done, and it was made standard procedure, and it was even endorsed so much by the ADA, who held the patent for amalgam fillings for some time until it ran out and made a lot of money from the patent, according to Dr. Hal Huggins, that they would punish dentists for telling their patients about this. So why? Why put mercury in amalgam fillings? Why formaldehyde in vaccines? Why mercury in vaccines? Why aluminum in vaccines? Why do we have barium, which is known to induce heart attacks? Why do we have strontium, which is poisonous to humans? Why do we have aluminum, which has no biological function in humans at all, being sprayed in the atmosphere in nanoparticulate size? When we know, science knows that the smaller the particulate that you breathe in, the more hazardous it is to your health.
Of course.
Well, here we go, Hans. Let me start to try to answer some of these questions.
Okay.
Um, the the one of the big reasons for chemtrails is depopulation. I firmly believe that because it's been documented that that's what they were planning on doing for a long time. And depopulation, I've been taught since high school that the world is overpopulated. And I don't really believe it's overpopulated. I believe that uh, we have been taught that it's overpopulated because the plan for depopulation had to have enough public support to move forward.
Hmm.
So when I was in high school and throughout the years, I've seen programs on all of these mainstream media channels like the Discovery Channel that would keep telling us what horrible things we're doing to the planet, which is true. There's a lot of pollution, there are a lot of bad things, but that it was because there were too many humans and humans are bad. Well, I think what's really going on is that if you have too many people, it's harder to control the people. You have to reduce the population to a level that is controllable and manageable. And I believe from the point of view of the people who run the governments of the world, okay, they all belong to the same club. And the most important thing, and this is the pivotal point of what I'm talking about, the spiritual side of chemtrails, is that these people who are head of the large corporations, who run the countries of the world, are religious. They have a religion, and they have a name for their religion. And their religion is called the mysteries or the mystery schools.
Hmm.
This is what they believe. If you know what the mystery schools are, if you understand what they believe, then everything that is happening in the world today makes sense. I'm not saying it's good, it's bad,
Of course,
but
it's bad. Uh-huh.
but it makes sense. Now, If anyone listening knows who William Cooper is, William Cooper had a radio program called The Hour of the Time for several years, and he taught better and clearer than anyone ever has what the mystery schools are. I encourage everyone, if you really want to understand the world and understand the spiritual side of chemtrails, look up the mystery schools or the mystery religion, look up William Cooper and listen to his program series. There's 42 programs in his series called Mystery Babylon. Now, that sets the basis. This is a really big subject. And like I said, he had 42 programs on there. Basically, can I fill you in a little bit and give you a few quotes of what some of these people have said so you can begin to believe and understand? Do we have time to do that, for me to read some quotes? I'm on Facebook every day. I work, and every hour or two I take a break and I jump on Facebook for 5 or 10 minutes. So I remember you saying you thought I'm on Facebook almost all the time. I'm on there a lot.
Me too, man.
I jump on and off real quickly. And when I'm on Facebook, I have a lot of friends on Facebook who have who post a lot of information, and I see a lot of this information. I get very concerned because a lot of the people are beginning or have begun to buy into belief systems that are being promoted by the so-called elites who believe in mystery Babylon, or who believe in the mysteries. They are of the mystery schools, and they are promoting these things, and people are starting or have started to buy into them and believe in them, but they're buying right into the elite's hand. And they need to be warned about this. They need to understand this. So let me start out with somebody that people have probably heard of, is Helena Blavatsky. Helena Blavatsky was someone who had a tremendous influence on the modern, what they call the New Age movement. She wrote about the plans of the elites, of what they were going to do. She was considered one of the most notorious writers on these subjects, possibly in history. Later on, Alice Bailey took over her place and started a publishing company called Lucifer Trust, which I'll get to in just a second. But Helena Blavatsky is very revered by a lot of the people that people are listening to today. People like Jordan Maxwell, and a lot of these, like Michael Sarion. These people are promoting the philosophy of Blavatsky and Alice Bailey without really knowing. Well, the people who are hearing it, I don't believe, are really knowing what they're listening to, because it sounds good on the surface. Now, let me read to you something that Helena Blavatsky wrote. Okay. She wrote this, quote, "The shadow of the unknown, an incognizable deity in space," that's who she's writing about, "but in antiquity and reality, Lucifer, or Luciferius, is the name of the angelic deity presiding over the light of truth as over the light of the day." And when she says as over the light of the day, just saying this angelic deity, this is what Helena Blavatsky is saying, this deity, Lucifer, is presiding over the light of truth as over the light of the day. Helena's philosophies are not new. They are part of the mystery school religion, which has been around since ancient Egypt and ancient Babylon. It's based in Kabbalism. And this Kabbalism has given us a lot of things in our modern culture. It has influenced show business. Many people who are in show business study this. And at the root of this is this belief that there is a deity called Lucifer who is the presiding light over truth. Okay? Now, Alice Bailey is a woman who basically took the place of Blavatsky after she passed on. And Alice Bailey started a publishing company called Lucifer Trust in honor of Lucifer. And she eventually changed the name to Lucius Trust. Now, this is a publishing company that is an influential publishing company among the elites. It's not just influential publishing company among the elites. It's actually used by the elites to indoctrinate people who you might consider in the middle management of this religion. Let me name a few names. John D. Rockefeller. These are trustees and sponsors of Lucius Trust, which was originally Lucifer Publishing. John D. Rockefeller. Norman Cousins, who was founder of the World Federalist Association. Robert McNamara, who almost everybody knows his name who studied history, businessman. He's the 8th Secretary of State of the U.S. Thomas Watson Jr. was the second president of IBM. He was former U.S. ambassador to Moscow. Henry Clisson is the Grand Commander of the Supreme Council of the 33rd Degree Southern District Scottish Rite Masonry. Of course, you have Alice Bailey. You have Manly P. Hall. These people are trustees and sponsors of Lucius Trust, formerly Lucifer Trust. They believe in the mystery schools. Now, a lot of people on Facebook are promoting the philosophies of someone named Manly P. Hall, Manly Palmer Hall. In fact, Jordan Maxwell talks about Manly P. Hall all the time and how he's a great friend of his and really reveres his writings. Well, let's read what Manly Palmer Hall believes in. Okay? The genuine esoteric. This is a quote from America's Assignment with Destiny. This is a writing from Manly P. Hall. The genuine esoteric associations always required that disciples prepare themselves for careers of practical services. Now, what he's talking about here is how they're going to infiltrate their religion into mainstream America. That's what this is about. Okay, continued. Quote, the student, that is the student of history school, was expected to attain to a state of unusual skill or proficiency in some branch of learning. He was then to practice this profession or craft as a means of extending his sphere of constructive influence. He was to teach through example, through his chosen vocation with the overtones of enlightened religious philosophy. Now that phrase, enlightened religious philosophy, means the mystery schools. They call themselves the enlightened ones, the illumined ones, the Illuminati. That's where this comes from. I'm not making this up. It's from their own literature, which was revealed by William Cooper. People need to know this.
Yeah.
Let me find where I left off. Okay, the overtones. So you're supposed to, what he's saying is you're supposed to go in, excel in your profession, but always exude overtones of this enlightened religious philosophy, which is the mystery schools. Thus, I'm continuing the quote, gradually creating a significant zone of influence, he was able or available whatever task the keepers of the great plan required. So he's saying that you go into a profession. This is what the people who are going to thrust this Luciferian religion upon America. And this again, this is not me saying this. This is what they are saying. They're going to go into a profession. They're going to practice their profession well and become influential. And then they're going to make themselves available for whatever task, quote, the keepers of the great plan required. Well, what is this great plan? This, now we're getting to the core of the spiritual purpose of chemtrails. What is this great plan? Okay? All right. Still with me? We still have audio and everything, Hans?
Everything. I'm impressed. I mean, you did a good research here. Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Continue.
Thank you, Hans. I'm very passionate about this because I feel that people are being deceived, and I don't want people to be deceived because they are the elites are trying to pull people in however possible. Now, before I go in and talk about what is the great plan, that is what we're looking for. What is the great plan?
Exactly.
First of all, let me go back and talk about deception. How did they deceive people? Now, one thing you'll notice that's going on in the world today is through media, through advertising, through Saturday morning cartoons, through schooling, what are they trying to teach you to do? Well, not entirely in schooling. The schooling is a little split. but that's a whole nother interesting subject. But everything is leaning towards everything that they promote in movies, everything they try to promote is trying to teach people to use their right brains, trying to be emotional, trying to be creative. Stop using your left brain so much. Start using your right brain. Start thinking in terms of being creative and emotional. Let your emotions guide you. Be guided by your heart, by your feelings. Well, let me tell you what happens when you're guided by your feelings. This is actually part. We were given a left-right brain hemisphere for our brain for a purpose. They're there to balance each other and to be used in with each other. Now, what happens when we all start becoming emotionalistic? When we start becoming guided by our emotions? People who are thinking emotional terms and forget what they know or forget how things actually work can really be influenced. They can be deceived. And this is why emotionalism is being promoted by media and by the elites so much. You see this in Hollywood all over the place.
Exactly.
Now, once somebody's become emotionalistic, they start making emotions based on how they feel, the only last challenge for controlling people is to steer their emotion, which is actually a very easy thing to do. So um, let me see how I can approach this a little and finish this off. The deception that I see going on today is very emotionally based, and there have been a whole myriad of religions that have been created in one form or another, and they all appeal to some aspect of human nature. Some appeal to your pride, some appeal to your lust, some appeal to your desire for self-righteousness, some appeal to other emotional uh, desires or feelings that we have. And so we can easily be drawn into things. But what often happens is we forget what we know. This is what happens with things like 9/11. Okay? Um, People can say whatever they want about how unbelievable it is that a government or there would be a conspiracy to do this. But here's the bottom line. And this bottom line comes to you or is understood when you use your left brain because it's based on science, it's based on physics, it's based on laws. Here's a left brain fact. Steel buildings can't fall under those conditions. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter how unlikely it is. It doesn't matter how believable it is. But it just can't happen. It's against physical laws. So there must be something else going on. So, but the problem is the way that they deceive so many in the public is they use an emotional argument. Say, "Oh no, government loves you," or there could never be a conspiracy. You'd know about it. The media would tell you about it, or this, that, or the other thing. But they're all emotionally based arguments. They're not logical arguments. So what people do is they start following their emotions and say, "Yeah, it must be right. Can't. It couldn't be that way, really. So it must be. There must be something that I don't know or understand. So I'm just going to not do anything or not care." And so it just goes by the wayside in the minds of many people. There's a saying in sales. I know people who are in sales. They will tell you that if you can't sell somebody on the merits of a product, baffle them with BS. That's what they say. And what does that really mean? That means you overwhelm them with so much information, usually of an emotional nature, that they then will become convinced that they need this product or they want this product or they want to take a vacation or whatever it is you're trying to sell them. You have to make an emotionally based argument and depart from the logic. So this is part of the reason why the emotionalism is being pushed so much today is because emotionally based people are very susceptible to deception. So this relates to chemtrails. This relates to everything that's going on because today in our world we're experiencing a deception on a scale that we've never experienced before in history. In fact, it never has been possible before in history because we've never had the technology to do it. We've never had radio. We've never had television that can communicate with so many people at the same time and spread deception so fast and so efficiently. Now, um, let me approach it this way too. Let me share a couple examples of what I'm talking about. Um, when you're trying to spread deception to people, when you're trying to, when you see the people of the world catching on to something you don't want them to catch on to. Let's say you've done something and you control the information structure of the world. Let's just say, and you don't want them to catch on. The most important thing you do is you jump in and you take over the information control for that subject. So, for example, let's say many people have been turned on to organics and herbs and found that there's tremendous scientific research supporting the use of herbs, and and the pharmaceutical companies are losing money. So how do the pharmaceutical companies combat this? They take over the lobby information structure, both in government and in the public. They take over the structures that spread information. So now most of the lobbying groups for herbs are controlled by the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of people don't realize that. Not all of them, but most of them are now controlled by the pharmaceutical industry. So what they'll do is they'll go to court, they'll fight these battles, they'll have this big battle, and they'll put on a big show and look like they're battling for the rights, but they'll lose. They'll almost win, but they'll lose. The Supreme Court ruling may be 5-4, but they'll lose. They'll look like they're making progress. They'll make people feel like they're for them, so people will keep giving them money. People will keep supporting them, but they'll lose. Rockefeller said that the best way to win a conflict is to control both sides. Control both sides. And that's what we have going on here. It never has been more possible to do this than in today's world with technology. So, let me bring this back to chemtrails. One of the things, let me talk about deception in chemtrails a little bit. One of the big things that are trying to be promoted in mainstream media right now and across the internet, these websites, is that contrails are normal, that jet engines produce trails. However, jet engines don't produce trails. In fact, the water vapor that's produced is so small, spread out so quickly, dissipated so fast, it doesn't have time to form a trail. And only under certain conditions, like under negative 40 degrees, at at higher humidities, can this happen. It can happen, but it's under very rare conditions, and those conditions only exist at altitudes too high to be seen from the ground. So, what the sprayers, what those spraying chemtrails want you to believe is that short trails that dissipate quickly are contrails. They're harmless. Why do they want you to believe this? If they can convince you that that's true, then the new equipment that they've installed that turns long persistent trails into short trails, they'll be able to continue their spraying, and nobody will object, because they'll look up and say, oh, those are just contrails. This is now being taught to children, school children, who are being taught to go outside and count the trails coming out of jets. It's being taught to people in aviation school. Okay, how do you get an expert to believe something? Teach it in school, and the next generation of experts will believe it. Doesn't matter if it's true, just like all the dentists believed that amalgam fillings were safe, right? But they're not. They believed a lie. Why? Because they were taught it in school. So question everything. So with the short trails, I saw twice. When I lived in Jamestown, they covered the sky every day. One day they stopped spraying. After a couple years of spraying, they stopped. And a 4-day break with no spraying. All right? On the 5th day, all the jets came back. They started spraying on the same schedules, but guess what? All their trails were short. Suddenly, they were all short. They didn't cover the sky anymore. In fact, you wouldn't even see the long, persistent trails anymore, except maybe 3 or 4 days a month.
Wow.
This happened overnight after a 4-day break. So what happened? Well, let's use our left brain. What must have happened is they must have changed their equipment or something about their equipment that makes the trails not persist anymore.
Uh-huh.
Um, so this is what's going on. Is they're trying to convince people that the short, non-persistent trails are harmless water vapor. Well, when they sprayed after this 4-day break, on the 5th day when they came back and sprayed, guess what? I could still smell after 20 or 30 minutes that the metallic, salty metallic taste would still come over, and I would have all the same symptoms. So nothing changed.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that changed is the trails went from long, persistent to short. Now, in my personal history, I've flown, like I said earlier, I've flown to the four corners of the United States. I've driven around the United States. I've watched the sky all my life. I've lived on military bases. I took flight lessons. Our family, I used to collect pictures and had over 1,000 pictures of aircraft. And guess what? Never once have I ever seen a trail coming out of a jet. I have had airline pilots call me over the last few months and thank me for my position on this. I had one guy, his wife actually flew for a cargo company. He didn't say what company. And I don't drill people for their privacy. You know, I respect their privacy. But she flew for a major cargo company. Maybe it was UPS or something. I don't know. And he also flew. So the husband and wife both flew jets. But he did it as a hobby and she did it professionally. And he just told me nice. He said, "I appreciate what you're doing." He says, "My wife and I have never seen trails come out of jets before this all started. This is not normal. And thank you for thanks for telling everyone about this because it's not normal."
Wow.
And I hadn't, that's not the only one.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this is how the deception takes place. This is typical disinformation, Hans. This is how they work. So now they're teaching.
Yeah.
They have the NASA cloud chart for school children that has 27 pictures of different clouds with all their new scientific names. And guess what? About 80% of those clouds came out of jets, but they don't tell the school children that.
Uh-huh.
And
That's right. Yeah.
I've done time-lapse photography of this for 3 years. I did 3 years of solid time-lapse. I probably have the largest collection of chemtrail time-lapse anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not, but it's a lot of time-lapse. And these clouds, and I've watched the sky all my life. There are 3 basic cloud types. There's cumulus, stratus, and cirrus. And nimbus is just a modifier. You have cumulus stratus or stratonimbus. That just means participation. That's why the original name of clouds were named that way. Mm-hmm. But now you have all these different cloud types, and 80% of the pictures in that cloud chart that are being used to teach the school children, mm-hmm. and they're using the same information to teach people in aviation and in meteorology today. So the new experts are going to believe all this stuff, that these are just natural clouds. They're all artificial clouds. 80% of them are artificial clouds. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. I mean, we're in a lot of trouble. The deception is deeper than most people think, and that's why I'm so passionate. That's why I'm talking your ear off today, and I hope you don't mind, because I want people to know that you need to protect yourself, and you need not to think that just because you see these short trails that it's over and you won the battle. Mm-hmm. The battle's only getting harder to fight because they're hiding it better. Does that make sense? And I'd love to tell you, if you'd like to hear it, what the big lie is. What is all this about? What is the whole thing about? What are the elites doing? Yep. What's in their minds? What's their goal besides control and power? Why are they doing this? Would you like to hear about that?
Please. I'm dying to hear that.
Okay. Let me share a couple things with you. Here's a few quotes. Mm-hmm. I'm going to quote from the book of Revelation of the Bible. This is very interesting stuff. I think people will find this very interesting.
Okay.
This is Revelation 18:23. It says, "For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived." Now, what is the context of this? This statement is talking about how all the nations of the world will be deceived into accepting this thing called the great lie. This is something that Paul talks about. The great lie. what is the great lie? This is incredibly fascinating because everything that we see happening today is aimed right at this thing. Now let's look at this verse again. It says, "For your merchants were the great men of the earth." Who is doing it? The merchant. What does the word merchants really mean? It means someone who's a powerful business person. Okay? They were the great men of the earth. Now the word great here, if you look at the original Greek, doesn't mean wonderful. It means powerful. So this is saying, so by your corporate CEOs and controllers were the powerful men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. Well, guess what the word sorcery is? It's the Greek word. Most times when you think of sorcery, you think of, Harry Potter or something like that, or you think of magic. The word sorcery comes from the Greek word pharmakia, and it's where we get our modern word pharmaceutical. So what this is really saying is your corporate CEOs were powerful men of the earth, and they deceived all the nations by your pharmaceuticals. Now, let me expand what pharmakia means. It doesn't just mean pharmaceuticals. Pharmakia means to drug or poison. So, in other words, this verse in Revelation 18:23 is saying that the world will be deceived because they will be drugged and or poisoned. All right? This is very fascinating stuff.
Right, yeah.
Now let me show you the next thing. Now the word pharmakia in pharmakos appears several times in the book of Revelation. Listen to this. This is Revelation 22:14 and 15. It says, "Blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter through the gates into the city. But outside are dogs and sorcerers and sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and whoever loves and practices a lie." All right, what is this talking about? This is talking about that after the end of this age, there's going to be a big change that takes place. And during this time, because there's going to be a change after that too, but during this time, there's going to be a group of people who are outside this great city. And outside, and I won't go into all the details, it would take a long time to explain, but it says outside the city, which is a good city, which is where you want to be. You don't want to be outside, but outside are dogs and sorcerers, and so on. Okay, what is the word sorcerer? It is the Greek word pharmakos, and it means a druggist or poisoner. So here again, we have another mention in Revelation of pharmaceuticals, which I think is very interesting. Let me read you one more, and then I'll try to tie this all together and show you what is this great lie. Why are they deceiving everybody by drugging and poisoning them? Revelation 9:20 and 21. "The rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues." Now, anyone who knows anything about the apocalyptic stuff in Revelation knows that it's a very bad time at the end of this age. A lot of bad things happen. Everybody seems to know that. But and there's plagues and there's all kinds of horrible things that happen. And this is talking about, well, let me just read it. It says, "The rest of mankind, those who were not killed by these plagues, did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons, nor idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which can neither hear nor walk, and they did not repent of their murders or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their thefts." There's the word sorceries again, and once again, this is the word pharmakia. So during this bad time, at the end of the age, there's going to be a continued practice of drugging and poisoning. And like I read in Revelation 18:23, it says, "They will deceive the nations by their sorcery." Now, if you listen to William Cooper in his series on Mystery Babylon, which I encourage everybody to listen to, very, very important. He talks about, he reads from the elite's own literature, where they say that they have tried to conquer the world before. They have tried to bring in a new world order in other kingdoms that have existed on the earth throughout history. And they have not succeeded for this reason or that reason. But this time, this last time, they say they're going to succeed because they've got technology. They've got the ability to deceive everybody for the first time. And this time, it's going to succeed. Not me saying this, that's them saying this. Okay?
Yeah.
So now let's look at what is this great lie? What is this great deception? Okay? Um, um, Professor Walter Veith is a lecturer who was in a very unique position. A lot of people haven't heard of him, but I would encourage everybody to go to orbisvitae.com. That's O-R-B, like boy, I-S, Orbis. It's Latin for circle. Vitae, V-I-T-A-E, which means life, like vida in Spanish. Orbisvitae.com. What's that?
Yeah, the vida. I mean,
Yeah,
I speak Spanish.
vida loca.
La vida loca.
Orbisvitae.com, and you look up Professor Walter Veith and listen to his lectures. His father was a messenger for the elites. And guess what he did? He delivered messages from channelers to high-ranking officials, presidents, magistrates of countries. They were receiving their instructions from channelers. This is according to a lecture by Dr. Walter Veith that it's on that website. Now, so look up Walter or look up Veith, do a search, and you can find it, or you can email me, which I'll give my contact information later, and I'll direct you to it. So they were delivering these messages to elites from channelers. So they were receiving instructions from some other place. They were being directed from some other place. People have always heard about rock musicians who have sold their souls. Okay, because and the saying goes that you sell your soul, and you'll get wine, women, and song, and your life will be wonderful, and you'll be famous, and all that. But at the end of it, Lucifer gets your soul. Now, there was one musician, I don't remember his name. He's really, really famous, and his name is escaping right now. But he was on 60 Minutes within the last 10 years, and he said publicly, he's not the only one, but he's one that said that he had sold his soul. He seemed to have regret about it, and it was exactly like everybody talks about. That everything starts working out for you. Everything starts happening well. You get famous. Everybody loves your song. Everything you want comes to you. But other parts of your life tend to deteriorate. And then at the end of the game, there's a big price to pay. Rolling Stones have talked about this. Mick Jagger has talked about this. There are other people who have talked about this. AC/DC talks about how there's a fifth member to the band, that they actually see this dark figure that appears often when they're on tour at the foot of the bed or here or there, and they feel like their songwriting happens without them even trying. It's and this is them saying this, not me. It's something comes in them and inspires them to write this music, so it's very interesting to hear that it's almost like it's coming from somewhere else. It's like there's some kind of communication going on. Now, what we have going on today is we have a guy named Maitreya. And I'm all working towards this whole concept of the great lie that the Bible talks about. There's a character called Maitreya. Maitreya is a person who has reportedly disappeared in thin air in front of people's eyes. He has a website. This website is sponsored by Share International. The person who prepares the speaking engagements and has personally witnessed some of the miraculous goings-ons that surround this guy named Maitreya is named Benjamin Creme. Benjamin Creme is kind of like the guy who clears the way for Maitreya. Now, this guy Maitreya claims to be a Christ. He claims to have what's called a Christ consciousness. He claims that Jesus Christ is actually under him, that he was one of his students. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And if people out there listening haven't heard of Maitreya, look him up. You'll see their website's called Share International. Guess who finances Share International? The United Nations. The United Nations is founded and run by the Rockefeller family. Rockefeller family virtually runs this country through the oil and pharmaceutical industry and now the agriculture industry. So ask yourself, what interest does the oil, one of the probably the most powerful man in the United States, probably on this continent, probably one of the 2 or 3 most powerful men on the planet, what does this family and this man have an interest in a Messiah? Why are they financing through the United Nations Maitreya, this guy who's actually been witnessed performing miracles, disappearing before people's eyes? What is the interest? Why? Well, let me tell you why. Let me look up my notes. I prepared some notes for today's show because I didn't want to forget anything, because I had a lot of stuff that I really wanted to say, and I'm honored that I can do it on your show, Hans.
Yeah.
Talking about, I was talking about how we're asking the question, what does the Rockefeller family, what does the United Nations have an interest in a Messiah? Why are they financing Maitreya? All right, listen to this. This is, there was a guy named John Todd. The Todd family is one of the Illuminist families, and John Todd actually defected, became a Christian, and exposed what was going on. Shortly after he went public, he disappeared, and no one's ever seen him again. But while he was exposing all of these things, he actually said that that many of the major organizations that are Christian organizations, many of the Christian magazines, many of the conservative or Republican or even Democrat, all of these, many of these organizations were financed by the Illuminati on both sides. No matter whether they took the conservative side or the liberal side of the conflict, they were controlled by the same group of people. Now, this shouldn't surprise us, because Rockefeller actually said himself, he said the best way to win a conflict is to control both sides. And that's exactly what they do. They have virtually no limit to the money they have access to. So buying and manipulating control of these organizations is simply an academic act. It's something you can do. Now, one of the organizations that John Todd said was bought out was Trinity Broadcasting. And so a lot of these, people complain about televangelists all the time. Well, maybe we shouldn't be so surprised that they make us cringe a lot of times, or we're embarrassed to look at them, because they're actually, that's the way it's supposed to be. They're trying to make a fool out of anything that relates to the Bible. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute, because the Illuminists hate the Bible. That's why there's so much disinformation. There's so many lies about the Bible going on, and I'm going to tell you the reason in a minute. William Cooper exposed this in his series, Mystery Babylon, that everybody should listen to. It's 42 radio programs, but if you want to understand the world, that is the place to start. It is absolutely awesome. John Todd actually also said that the John Birch Society is also another organization that was controlled and completely financed by the Illuminists. Okay, so here they are controlling the conservative Republican side. They also control the other side as well, but this is one of the organizations he specifically mentioned. Now listen to this. This is from New American Magazine, which I believe is their magazine. This was published October 19th, 1992. It's from an article called The New World Religion by William Jasper. He was quoting New Age leader Donald Keyes, who was president of the Planetary Citizens, and he's also author of the book Earth at Omega. Now, Omega, I'd like to talk about this in a couple minutes, this whole idea of Omega, because the Omega sign appears on the tails of chemtrail planes. All right, here's what William Jasper wrote. He says, we have a meditation at the United Nations a couple times a week. The meditation leader is Sri Klumnoy, if I'm saying his name correctly. And this is what he said. He said, we have a meditation at the, he said, the United Nations is a chosen instrument of God, a divine messenger carrying the banner of God's vision and outer manifestation. One day, the world will treasure the soul of the United Nations as its very own with enormous pride, for this soul is all-loving, all nourishing, and all fulfilling. So here we have a Rockefeller funded, founded organization, the United Nations, that is having meditation ceremonies run by people who are leading these ceremonies who believe that the United Nations is a God given entity with a soul, virtually, that is all loving, all nourishing, and all fulfilling. The thing that you begin to find out about people like William Jasper is that he is a mystery school's student or believer. He is one of them. So when they use the word God, it's not the God of the Bible. They're talking about a different God. When you look on the American money, I've seen a lot of people saying, hey, look, it says, in God we trust.
Yeah.
Well, it also has the all seeing eye on the other side with the 13 steps of the pyramid and all the other paraphernalia that you see on there that relates to the mystery schools. This is all Luciferianism. And on the other side of the bill, it says, in God we trust. Well, guess what? It's not the God of the Bible that a lot of Christians have thought it was. This is a different God. Okay? Now let me get you, I'm coming to the point where we're talking about what is the big lie? What is this all about? What is it all coming down to? Here we have the whole world. Look at all the flags of the world, Hans. They have yellow fringes around the borders of them. They didn't used to have yellow fringes. The aspect ratio of all the flags is the same. What is that? The aspect ratio is the ratio between the height and the width. They're the same size. Isn't that kind of strange? Why would a sovereign independent country make a flag that matches every other flag and have a gold fringe around it? In the United States, if you go to your county building, you'll see a flag flying out front. That's just the plain American flag. But if you go to the DMV or the tax office or the courtroom, you'll see a flag with a yellow fringe. It's a different flag. Now, without going into that, because that's a big subject, what's going on here? This is part of the mechanism, the legal mechanism that's been used to take over the countries of the world by the global elite mystery school Luciferians. This is what's happening right now today. This is not me saying this. This is from their own literature. They claim to be Luciferians. They claim to have taken over the world, and all the evidence we see going on in the world, from the toxins intentionally in vaccines, the substances added to vaccines that sterilize people, chemtrails, the poisons and fillings, all of these things that cause death, depopulation, all of these things that are being run and instructed by the mystery schools religion are happening for a reason, because these people have a belief and a philosophy that supports them doing these horrible things. And it's not the first time in history that this has happened. They've run many of the large civilizations in history. Some of the things that they're teaching, and we're getting towards I'm working towards that big lie. What is the big lie? We know that we've all heard about the Zeitgeist movement. The Zeitgeist movement is heavily promoted by the Zeitgeist series of movies, and has been run by Peter Joseph, and it teaches what's called a resource-based economy. It's a philosophy that says that if we have resources, then we'll share them. And to your right brain, that sounds like a really good idea and a very charitable thing to do. And I believe in charity. I love people. I care about people. This is why I put myself on the line on publicly stating these things that can sound crazy to the public. I realize that they're not me saying them. I'm simply repeating what the elites have said about themselves, just like William Cooper has done. He's the one that I think a lot that people need to listen to and get their information straight from the literature. But I love people. I care about people. I care about this world. I care about truth. I care about people having security and peace in their lives. I want them to be able to raise their families and go to movies and help other people and do all the good things that everybody else wants to do. This is where I get my strength. This is what inspires me. I want to see people do good in the world. But we have obstacles. All right?
Okay.
And here are some of the obstacles. You have this philosophy being spread through Zeitgeist and the Venus Project that teach a resource based economy. And it sounds real good to our emotions. The problem is, what they don't tell you is that the people who will be controlling the resources are the same people who control the world today. It's going to be the mystery schools. If you know the mystery schools, if you understand by listening to Cooper's teachings, then you understand that these mystery school philosophies are being taught. You can see them in the cracks of the Zeitgeist movie. Now, I'm not saying I disagree with most of the movie. I disagree with the first part of it because it's full of historical inaccuracies. The whole, they bash Christianity, and that was very unfair and wrong of them to do. It's completely scholarly and accurately inaccurate when you do your research. But the second part talks about the conspiracies that are going on in the world. And I think it's largely accurate. I think it's a very well-made movie, and it's very largely accurate. But it's promoting, and Peter Joseph goes on to promote resource-based economy like the Venus Project. And this is socialism. This is communistic in its nature. And the reason the elites like socialism is because there always has to be somebody controlling the resources, somebody at the top of the heap who has the ultimate power. In a socialistic or communistic system, the individuals give their power away. You don't own your property. Today you think you own your property? No, you don't even, people don't even know what ownership is. Ownership means that it can never be taken away from you for any reason whatsoever by anyone. Okay? It's not going to happen. But today, if you don't pay your taxes, or for other various reasons, if you've committed certain crimes, they'll come and take your property, whether it's your car or your house or whatever. So do you really own your property? No, you don't own your property. We say we own our property because it makes us feel good. The banks make us feel good because we're spending all this money for this thing we own, but we don't even own it. We're just taking custody of it. And if we don't perform certain things, then that custody will be taken away.
Of course.
So we don't even understand ownership
It's
today.
true. Yeah,
So
I mean, there's a
when
martial
we
law.
have the idea of resource-based economy, the people who are pushing the socialism and the communistic ideas that are behind this are supporting the mystery schools philosophy, the same people, the same families that are spraying chemtrails, the same people who are putting poisons in vaccines, who are promoting GMOs, who are lying to us through the media, who are not letting us have the cures for the problems that we do have, are the same people promoting all of these things. Zeitgeist, the Venus Project, and all of these philosophies about sharing our resources because they are putting themselves at the top of this heap. Now, it sounds like a good idea. And of course, if anybody wants to give away their resources that they own or control, that's fantastic. That's called charity. Charity is the old English word for love. That's an act of love, and that's a wonderful thing, and people should do that. But to be forced to do that is criminal because ownership is a fundamental right that we should all have to maintain our control, our property, and our power over our property. However, most people don't understand this because it's been taken away today. Now, I'm working my way towards explaining the great lie. What is the great lie that these elites are so into? Here's what it all comes down to. Here's what it all comes down to. The elites believe something that has a belief system that's been around for a long time. Let me see if I can, let me read you, let me go back to this statement by Blavatsky, who says, the shadow, this is Secret Doctrine by Helena Blavatsky. Here's what she says. Shadow of the unknown in uncognizable deity in space. But in antiquity and reality, Lucifer or Luciferus is the name of the angelic entity presiding over the light of truth as over the light of the day. That is from her writing called The Secret Doctrine. Here's another writing from The Secret Doctrine. Lucifer is divine and terrestrial light, the Holy Ghost and Satan at one and the same time. This, if you go back and you look at the beginning of the Bible, You have an account of the Garden of Eden, and everybody's heard about it. Everybody says there was an apple, and Eve took the apple. Well, there was no apple. There's no mention of an apple. It's a much more technical story than people realize. But nevertheless, the whole point of that is that Lucifer, or the Satan in the garden, tells a lie. And he tells this lie to mankind, and he says, um, he's basically saying, aren't you God? God is lying to you because he knows that in the day you eat of this fruit, or take of this fruit, partake of the fruit, it's not just eating of fruit, there's a lot more to the story, but I'll just leave that for now.
Mm-hmm.
In the day that you take of this fruit, your eyes will be open and you shall be like him. Now, in esoteric religions, in the mystery schools, they talk in their literature that they are going to perform what's called the externalization of the hierarchy. What is the externalization of the hierarchy? The externalization of the hierarchy means they're going to teach the world their religion. They're going to teach it through every means possible. And if you know anything about the mystery schools and you watch a Saturday morning cartoon, you'll see it. This is why I say you have to understand what's going on, because the deception is so deep and is so pervasive that if you don't, you will be sucked in. You will be sucked in to the great lie. What is the great lie? The great lie is the same one that the serpent told in the Garden of Eden. It's the same one that Helena Blavatsky has been sucked into, that the Rockefeller family has been sucked into, that all of the elites have been sucked into and are now thrusting upon this whole world. The great lie that Paul talks about is the lie that Lucifer is God. This is not me saying this. This is from their own writings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cooper talks about this. He exposes all this information in his 42-part series on the mystery schools. Revelation talks about this. Why do the elites, mainstream media, Saturday morning cartoons, the education system bash the Bible? I used to watch the Discovery Channel all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you something. I've actually read and studied the Bible since the early 80s. I found it fascinating. I actually had a very interesting event that happened to me that turned my life around. It was an answer to prayer, which I may or may not share here. But the bottom line is, it was something that turned my life around. It was an answer, a direct supernatural answer to prayer that could not be fulfilled by any man. And it turned my life around and made me start studying the Bible and go to church. So I've done that since the early 80s. Well, I used to watch a lot of TV. I watched Discovery Channel. One thing I noticed is that they were always lying about the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
They would lie all the time about the Bible.
Really, their programs.
Every single time they said anything about the Bible, it was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very clever. It was very shrewd. And they always would paint it with a very clever deception to put a negative spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, that's not what it says. That's the wrong conclusion, and that's the wrong reason. And it was kind of frustrating to me because I don't like lies. You know, it doesn't matter. I've never been someone who wants to thrust my belief system on someone. I want truth. I don't care how I feel about it. There have been many times in my life that I don't like the truth, but I would much rather know what it is, and I'll get over my emotions. It's more important for me to change, to understand, to be willing to hear the truth than to go in denial about it and pretend it doesn't exist. So why do the elites hate the Bible so much? Why do they slander it so much? Why is it slandered in mainstream media all the time? It's slandered because the Bible is the only book that calls out the mystery schools. In Revelation, it talks about Mystery Babylon. It talks about and makes allusions to the mysteries and the blood of the prophets that have been spilled on the hands of these people who have believed in this religion, who have believed the great lie. What is the great lie? The great lie is that Lucifer is God. It's the divinity. It also incorporates into it an attribute that tries to make it very appealing to people. And what's more appealing than to think that we could be God? Now, if you look, one of the symbols that are used in Masonry, which is an offspring of Kabbalism, which is the doctrine of demons, which contains a lot of truth, but the Bible refers to doctrines of demons that will be used to promote the great lie. That's exactly what is happening today. It's exactly what's going on. So what is this five-pointed star we see on the our money and all over the place in these different secret societies? Well, it's the Michelangelo divinity of mankind. It is part of the philosophy. It represents the philosophy that mankind is divine and mankind can become God. It is the same lie that was exposed by in the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis. And yet the symbol of that lie, which is that five-pointed star, the divinity of mankind, is being spread by the mystery schools, by the very same people who are spraying you with chemtrails, who are putting poisons in your mouth and in your vaccines, who are running the world and who are conducting these wars. This is the people who are teaching you this. It's a very, these Kabbalistic beliefs are very seductive. They pump you up, they empower you emotionally, but just like selling your soul to the devil, the end of it is destruction. The end of it is very negative and very destructive. And people need to know this. Now, this stuff is exposed in all of the mystery school literature that I've been sharing with you. And let me share with you even this quote from Alice Bailey, who even uses the word mysteries. This is what they call themselves. I just want to show people this. Here's three quick quotes. It says, the three main channels through which the preparation for the new age is going on might be regarded as the church, the Masonic fraternity, and the educational field. It must not be forgotten that only these souls who are on the probationary path, okay, these are the elites, or the path of discipleship, followers of the elites, will form the nucleus of the coming world religion. These are the people who will control the resources in your resource-based economy. These are people who will control the world in the new world order that we've heard all these presidents talk about. Here's the last part of the quote. When the great one comes, this is Alice Bailey, founder of Lucifer Publishing, which was changed to Lucis Trust. The name was changed to Lucis Trust later on. She says, when the great one comes, now who do you think the great one is? That is their God. That is Lucifer. When the great one comes with his disciples and initiates, we shall have the restoration of the mysteries and their esoteric presentation. This is what you're seeing on the Saturday morning cartoons. You're seeing it in the music industry. You're seeing it in Olympic presentation. You're seeing it in mainstream media all over the place, that they are externalizing the hierarchy and teaching the public their religion. Now, I know I'm going on, but I want to let you know that there are some very interesting things happening. At this time in history is like no other for many reasons. Technology has increased in the past 150 years faster than at any time in, at least in this age. I believe that there may have been very advanced technologies in previous ages. In fact, it's very likely. But here's something very interesting. There are several prophecies in the Bible that I find very interesting that I think people need to know about. Keeping in mind that all of these things that people have heard about the Bible, about how it contradicts each other and there's no original manuscripts and it wasn't written by the original people and all, most of these things are complete lies. Complete lies that any scholarly research for a few hours can completely dispel. Just like the beginning of Zeitgeist. The whole Christianity bashing part of Zeitgeist in the first 45 minutes or however long that segment is, 50% of the information was completely made up. And people need to realize this. And I think a lot of people have, because I've seen a lot of people have stopped paying a lot of have stopped posting all these things that support it in the last year. as people have realized, woken up and realized that the people behind Zeitgeist and this Christian bashing are not looking out for your best interest and not telling you the entire truth. And what we need is the entire truth. Now, we live in a very important time in history. The Bible says that knowledge shall be increased, and this will happen shortly before the return of the Messiah. The Messiah is the person that people, Christians, typically call Jesus Christ. His name is Yeshua. Um, he's one everybody calls Jesus. Everybody's familiar with his name, and there's some prophecies that talk about things that will happen shortly before the return of the Messiah. And most people don't know about this, and it's just shocking to me. But yet it makes sense because the mystery schools own and control and have spread so much disinformation through the educational system and through mainstream media that people aren't even interested. They become so turned off because people like Katie Couric will say that the Bible is the most dangerous book in the world, and other people have said that too. It's the most dangerous book if you believe in the mysteries. If you're one of the people who spray chemtrails, who start wars, who inject vaccines to depopulate the world, yes, it's dangerous to you because it calls out your religion, it exposes you for who you are, a believer in Luciferianism. So here's some of the things that interesting prophecies that talk about what's going to happen shortly before the return of Christ. It says, one of them refers to the Arabah. This is in Isaiah 35:1. And let me open this up, and I think this is really, really important. People need to know this. To rise above so much of the deception that is going on today that is going to lead them to the same place that all these rock musicians get led to because of false beliefs. We need truth. Here's an interesting thing. This is Isaiah 35, chapter 1. It says, "The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as a rose." Okay, now this sounds like a pretty generic verse. But what people don't realize is that the word desert in the original language is the word Arabah. And it's not just a general word for desert. It's a specific desert that's around the Dead Sea. And it says that the Arabah shall blossom. In fact, it talks about the Dead Sea is going to become two separate bodies of water. This is a Bible prophecy in Isaiah 35 that the Dead Sea will become two separate bodies of water. The southern portion will be given over to salt, and the northern portion, the salinity levels will decrease to the point where it will become a very, very rich place for raising fish. Well, guess what? Go on Google Earth and look at the Dead Sea right now, anybody who wants to look. It's two separate bodies of water. Why haven't the media told you about this? Why didn't anybody tell you this was going to happen? The way that this happened is the level of water has decreased over 70 feet over a period of years. This was over 15 years ago, 20 years ago, this happened. The levels went down, and about 2/3 of the way down in the Dead Sea, there's a large rift that is now exposed and separates the Dead Sea into two separate bodies of water. Guess what? The southern portion has been given over to salt. I've seen pictures of it. It is salt. It is just. In fact, they mine salt there. There's so much salt. The northern portion, the salinity levels have been declining to the point that within the next few years, it is expected to support fish. Isaiah 35 is talking about this. Now, why is this going to happen? Why is this important? Well, let me explain this by talking about another prophecy. The desert shall blossom as a rose, like I just said a minute ago. What does this mean? One of the world's, possibly the largest aquifer in the world, was discovered about 20 years ago. Guess where? Below the Arabah. And in fact, there was pressure in some areas that was actually forming small pools and puddles on the surface because it was breaking up. Well, what has happened is a number of farmers have purchased land very cheap and is now growing some of the most dense and rich agricultural land. They're producing more fruit per acre than in other places in the world in some of these places in the Arabah. and they're using water, this large aquifer. So it says in this, it shall blossom as the rose. Now, what is a rose? A rose is beautiful. A rose is a picture of beauty. It shall blossom beautifully.
Love.
Now, this has already begun to happen. The farmers are taking part of some of it. The Dead Sea has become two separate bodies of water. The southern portion is beginning over salt, be given over to salt. The northern portion will be habitable for sea life before too long. Why is this happening? Well, the Bible goes on to explain through the prophet Isaiah that God says that I will prepare that land for those people who will come up on a highway that will be there called the King's Highway. They will come up to worship the Messiah every year. Okay, they will pay his respect and homage to him for all the wonderful things that he has done. And they will need provision. They're going to need water along the way. They're going to need food. And guess what? It's being provided by the fulfillment of this prophecy. Now, what goes on and becomes really interesting about these other prophecies is that a lot of people have talked about Christ over the years and what they think of Christ and who he is and what he does. And there's so much propaganda out there. I know the Bible. I've read it cover to cover 15 or more times. I've stopped counting at 12. I've studied it for many years. And there's so much fascinating and mind-blowing information, especially numerologically and prophetically. One of the things that Christ is called is he's called the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Well, people wonder what that means and what that all comes from. And here's one of the pieces of information that Discovery Channel loves to harp on, or other programs, and say there's contradictions in the Bible. If you look in Matthew, there's a genealogy. Now, there's the 4 books of the Bible present 4 different aspects of God or Christ, and the word, the number 4 is always associated with Christ. If you look at the very first line in the Bible, for instance, the very first line in the Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Now, if you look at the Hebrew, the word "in the beginning" is actually one Hebrew word. So that's the first word. Okay, encompasses time. Second word is God, is created. So it actually says, "In the beginning, created God," and then there's a fourth word, which I'll get to in a second. So "in the beginning" is the first word. The second word is created. Okay, now when God created, according to the Bible, he separated things from himself. A lot of people have this view that everything is incorporated inside God. But the biblical view is that he separated something from himself for a purpose. The purpose is for his pleasure. That's what it comes down to. So he separated. So the second word, the number 2 in the Bible, is always associated with division. That's when you separate 2 things out from each other, or you have one person that opposes another. And here we have the second word in the Bible is created. And his creation was a process of separation. The third word in the Bible is 3. The number 3 is always associated with God himself, because he's considered the triune God. There's 3 aspects to his personality: body, soul, and spirit. Soul being the representation of emotions, spirit being the representation of intellect, and body being the physical manifestation in this dimensional plane of existence. So you've got the number 3. The word God in the Hebrew, it's Elohim. The fourth word, this is very interesting, and this is getting me back to the other thing I was going to talk about, Christ, and the number 4, because there's 4 gospels. The number 4 is always associated with Christ. The fourth word in the Bible is not translated. If you go in the Bible, you won't find it there. You have to get what's called an interlinear Bible, which actually shows the original Hebrew. And every word in the interlinear Bible has a number associated with it. You can take that number and look it up in a Strong's exhaustive concordance, and you can get a definition for that word. The fourth word, and this is I'm going to talk to you right now about Omega. There's an Omega sign on the tail of chemtrail jets. The fourth word is just the Hebrew letter Aleph Tav. It's the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's not really a word. It's not translatable, but it's the first letter and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay. Fourth word in the Bible. Okay, so Let me come back to that in just a second and tell you what that means.
Uh-huh.
So in the beginning is one word, created is the second word, God is the third word, Aleph Tav is the fourth word. Okay?
Okay.
Created God, heavens, earth. Okay? All right? So the fifth word is heavens, and the sixth word is earth. The number 5 is always associated with grace, forgiveness, grace. Throughout the Bible, no matter what book you look in, 6 is the word earth in the Hebrew. The number 6 is always associated with mankind. And most people might recognize it from Revelation 13, where it talks about 666.
Yeah,
This is the
exactly.
number of man. Man, 666, like the carbon atom a lot of people talk about.
Yeah.
But it's specifically talks about no man may buy or sell unless he has this number. And this number relates to the Roman Empire, because if you add up all of the Roman numerals, you put them in the right kind of square, every direction, uh, uh, mathematically adds up to 666. I won't get into that now. It's very, very fascinating, but it has to do with the last kingdom that was in Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue that outlined the entire history of humanity. Right now, we're at the very end of that dream. The end of the dream ended at the feet and the toes, where you had clay mixed with iron, and that's where we are right now. So the word number 6. Let me get back to the first sentence in the Bible. The number 6 is earth, the dwelling place of mankind. 6 is always related to mankind. So in the first sentence, you have some interesting numerology that is reflective in the entire book. Old Testament, New Testament, doesn't matter. It's all the same. Now let's look at the fourth word. The number 4 is always associated with the creative works of Christ. John talks about the things that all creation was made through him, and nothing was made that was made except that was made through him.
Mm-hmm. Sorry
Very
to interrupt
interesting
you.
stuff. I
Sorry
can
to
get
interrupt
great
you.
technical detail about it, but the bottom line is
Uh-huh.
that the fourth word is the number of the number 4 there with the olive at the top.
Uh-huh.
What does Christ refer to himself at the end of the book of Revelation? He says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. The Alpha and Omega. Now, there's a key word that the mysteries, remember, the mysteries have their own God. They use the word God, but they're talking about a different God. And that God is always representative of Omega. Okay? Or I shouldn't say always, because it's not, because there's a lot of symbolism. But the Omega symbol, I'm trying to look for the exact word. I had it written down in my notes, and it's escaping me right now. But the term Omega is associated with that. And we see that plane crash that happened, the chemtrail plane that was famous a couple of years ago. The Omega symbol on the tail of the plane. Christ says, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. You have the fourth word in the Bible here that is the first and last word of the Hebrew alphabet, right next to the word God, right after the word creation, talking about obviously reflective of the presence of Christ being there, that this is the physical manifestation of God. It's very interesting and very fascinating, and I'm mainly sharing that because of the numerology. I originally was talking about the Discovery Channel. The way I led into that was the Discovery Channel likes to say, oh, there's a contradiction in Matthew and in Luke because there's two genealogies of Christ and they don't match each other. What they don't tell you is what scholars already understand about it, is that one of the genealogies has 66 names in it, and the other genealogy has 77. 6 is the number of man. 7 is the number of spiritual completion or fulfillment. It's about spiritual perfection.
Mm-hmm.
So in the genealogy of Matthew, it's called the royal genealogy. It is actually the descending genealogy because kings always make their genealogy by descent. It is the descending genealogy, the legal succession line from David, that includes David to Joseph, through Solomon, that shows the royalty of Christ. Now, Christ has an interesting title. He's called the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He's two different people in one. The King of Kings refers to tribe of Judah in the Old Testament that was royal line. These were the kings. King David was of the tribe of Judah. Then you have the other tribe, which was the Levitical line. This was the priest line. These were the people who were allowed to be priests. This is absolutely fascinating. You have 66 names. This is the royal genealogy that was chosen by God. These were the kings that were chosen that show his royal king line that end, that go all the way down and end with Joseph. So Joseph, Mary's husband, was the end, was second to last, ending with Christ in that genealogy. In Luke, you have a genealogy that goes the way. It's an ascending genealogy because that's how mankind traces his origins, through ascent. That's the way that it's done. And you have this David through Joseph, but it doesn't follow the same family line. It diverges with the son of Solomon. Instead of Solomon, who was the youngest born, it goes through Nathaniel. And it's one set of rules to make one genealogy is based on the royal rules because they were chosen directly by God through the prophets. The other line was the natural descending line based on the firstborn, because the firstborn was the inheritance. Now, this all sounds very technical, but this is what it all means. And this is absolutely fascinating, is that in the Matthew's genealogy of Christ, it shows an accurate succession to Joseph. And in the 77 names in Luke, that genealogy shows the natural succession that ended in Mary, that went through, that included the Levitical line. So you have Christ genealogy being the culmination of Judah and Levitical line. So he's the king, and he's also the priest, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. This is really fascinating information, which is something I've seen on the Discovery Channel that just kind of, one of the many things I've seen all over the place, that they just slander and tear apart and say, oh, look, this is a contradiction and it's horrible and it's more evidence that the Bible doesn't know what it's talking about. When you really look deeper, you find out that numerologically it's accurate, trying to depict exactly why the two lines are what they are, because one was chosen by the prophets and one was chosen through natural descent and has 77, the number of spiritual perfection that leads to the priesthood, whereas the other one has 66, which leads and ends to the kingship, which culminate in one person. Not a coincidence, something very interesting that people should know. Probably one other thing I should share. There's so many things I could share. I mean, it's never ending. And I know I'm just talking your ear off. I hope people are benefiting from this because I'm interested in truth. I'm not trying to push my religion. I'm trying to tell you what I have learned, and that there is a great deception going on. We know who's doing the deception. We know why they're doing it. And we know that the Bible has called them out. So naturally they hate it, and they have slandered it, the subject of it, to no end. Now we have something that's very commonly, well, I can cover that in a different time. But you have a lot of people talk about 666. This is another very interesting thing that people need to understand. This is in Revelation 13. This is beginning to happen right now, and people need to be aware of this. And I'm sharing this because I care. And after studying this for 30 years now, reading it 15 times cover to cover, and really looking into the depths of what's going on in the world, the prophecies that are taking place in Scripture line up point for point with what we're seeing happen today, whether it's chemtrails, the pharmaceuticals, the great merchants of the earth and what they're doing, and what I'm about to tell you, which is probably the most well-known of all of them. This is 666. It's beginning to happen, and people have to know about it, because in Revelation 14, the very next chapter says, if you take the mark of the beast, okay, this is a mark that you will have to have in order to buy or sell. You can't conduct commerce in this system unless you have this mark. And what it says in the next chapter, if you take this, that is the final sign of your redemption of God, because you were not willing to learn what this stuff was all about. You were not willing to build yourself and edify yourself in the knowledge of these things, so that you had the strength and the courage to reject it. And therefore, you will be cast into the lake of fire. Now, that sounds like a horrible thing to happen. I know it sounds mean, But if you understand that you're dealing with royalty, God, if you lived in a kingdom where you had a king, or let's say you had a wonderful righteous president in the world, if that president came to visit you, what would you do? You would be very respectful. He did great things and he has a very, very honorable office. You would be respectful. If he was a king and you lived in old times, you would bow down. You'd pay your respects. You certainly wouldn't insult him. And what we're dealing with in Christ, in what I've come to believe from my research, and it makes complete sense and jives with everything that's going on today, that you are dealing with someone who is the king of the kings. He is the priest of the priests. He's someone who committed miracles, many miracles in the sight of many people. Do we know any men or many men who have done such a thing? And who did he claim to be? What prophecies did he tell? And are those things actually happening today? So do we have evidence that he is who he says he is? Now, Revelation 13 talks about the mark of the beast. It says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon." Now this is symbolism talking about the people of the world and what the nations, what the political powers are going to do. Revelation 13:12 says, "He exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." So there will be something that's symbolized by a beast who has a deadly wound that is healed. Now let me get right to the punchline here. In Revelation 13:18 is the thing you've seen in all the movies, and Rosemary's Baby and Damien and all those scary movies. They talk about 666. It says, "Here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of man, and his number is 666." Now the number of 666, a lot of people relate to the carbon atom, and they look at this verse and go, "Oh, well, that's just referring to mankind," and that's not what it says. What it says is this. In 13:17, it tells you what the significance, the verse right before it says, what is the significance of this number? 13:16, let me go two before. It says, "And he," this is the one that people commonly know as the Antichrist, this man who will rise up with great political power, "had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause." So the image of the beast will cause as many as would not worship the beast should be killed. So in other words, here's a real graceful political system in Luciferian for you. If you don't worship the beast, they're just going to kill you. That's how it's going to happen. So in 13:16, "He causeth all, both great and small, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark on their right hand or their foreheads." Okay, a mark. Interesting. 13:17 says, "That no man may buy or sell unless he has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." All right, first of all, what is this mark? The mark is one of these three things. It is the number of the beast, the number of his name, or the mark itself. Where's the mark going to be? On the right hand or the forehead. What is the number? What is the number of the beast that will be on the right or forehead? It's 666. If you look at the symbol called the Mobius, it is a symbol that's used in a lot of these esoteric religions, or used in the mystery schools and a lot of the spin-off, a lot of the subsidiaries, I call them, of the mystery schools, because they all are. So many of them are really the same thing. They just have a different flavor, so they appeal to a different emotional type of person. You know, like it's a smorgasbord of religion. So everybody gets something that makes them feel good. If you look at all these things, some of them use Mobius, and the Mobius is really what's called a stylized 666. This is not me saying this. This comes right from their own literature. I want to stress that. This is stuff they teach. It's not stuff that I teach. It's stuff they teach. The Mobius is stylized 666. If this Mobius has been presented on the face of the new world global ID cards. I could go way into that, but I'm going to save that for a minute. I just want people to be aware of that, that when you see the Mobius, if you don't know what it is, look it up on Google. You can see what the image looks like. Now, this 666 that's going to be on the right hand or forehead of these people. Why might it be in the forehead? Because somebody may not have a hand. Maybe they're an amputee, and so they might have to have this mark on the forehead. Let's look at the word. Let's look at what this mark is used for. You don't have this mark, you can't buy or sell. What's happening today? We just saw this last week in Texas that they are putting wristbands on school children in a couple pilot schools in Texas that have to wear these things. This is obviously and clearly just mental conditioning to get people used to having a number and to having some kind of mark or identifier on their body. Through the last 20 years, I've watched all of the mainstream television shows promote the idea of tattoos. Why are they promoting tattoos, saying they're wonderful? Well, first of all, some tattoo inks contain heavy metals, and some red tattoo inks actually contain mercury. Okay? Just like we've heard a lot about red lipstick. That some lipsticks and some cosmetics have mercury in them. This is again why I want to tell people the truth, because you need to protect yourself. You need to know this. You don't want to be exposing yourself to mercury. So if you really want to have a tattoo, you check with the person who's doing the work and make sure it doesn't have heavy metals, because sometimes the blue has cobalt, sometimes the red has cinnabar, which is the red ore of mercury, and the other colors often have other heavy metals. So make sure that they're using the new safe style of inks. Okay? So all of these shows in the last 20 years on the mainstream media have been promoting the idea of getting tattoos. Go get tattoos, everybody. It's wonderful, it's great, it's stylish. Well, one of the reasons I believe that they're doing it is because it's causing more illness. And who profits from that illness? The pharmaceutical industry profits from that illness. Just like they profit from chemtrails because it makes people sick. Just like they profit from the poisons in vaccines or the mercury that's in amalgam fillings. The other reason I believe that they promote tattoos is because it's psychologically conditioning people to accept a mark that you cannot buy or sell unless you have that mark. I'm not the only person saying this. This is in their own literature. And furthermore, if you listen to Alex Jones' interview with Aaron Russo, who is a co-founder, who is the founder of the organization called Restore the Republic, which is now run by Gary Fanchi. If you go to rtr.org and you look at the bottom of their website, you'll see where it says this website is in honor of Aaron Russo. Aaron Russo produced, I believe, was Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and The Rose with Bette Midler. He was a Hollywood producer. He owned nightclubs. He was a guy who eventually was approached by the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers told him that 9/11, well, alluded that 9/11 was going to happen, said there was going to be an event and it was going to be the thing that will help the political arm of the United States bring in the Patriot Act. But he also told them about a mark. And he said, we're going to microchip the people so that the people, if they disobey, we're going to turn their chip off and they will not be able to buy or sell, so that they will be isolated from the system. They can't do anything. They're going to be powerless. Completely take your power away to do any commerce with anyone. And if you know anything, unless you're a great survivalist and prepper and you've got some land, you can't survive without doing commerce with other people. This was Aaron Russo in that interview. I would highly recommend go to orbisvitae.com, the website I mentioned earlier, and we've got it on there. Look it up and check it out. This was directly from Rockefeller telling Aaron Russo. Revelation 13:17 talks about this mark that will be put on people, and you can't buy or sell unless you have this mark. Now let's look at the word mark. This is extremely fascinating. The word mark is numbered 5480 in Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. You can look it up yourself if you're willing to do that research. This is a word that also is derived from a word that means a fence or a picket fence. A fence that has vertical planks. Have you ever seen a picket fence? What does it look like? It looks like a barcode. This picket fence is going to be a mark that's on your right hand or forehead that's going to have a number on it. What number do we know today that looks like a picket fence that could be on your right hand or forehead that represents a number? Could it be any more plain? And again, I tell people this because I care about people. I don't care how people, I do care about how people feel about me, but I won't be controlled by it. But I want to be a liked person. But it's more important to tell the truth because these are such important subjects that have to be told. And Hans, I'll tell you what, I wrote a small book here in preparing for today, and you can probably tell because I'm talking your ear off nonstop, but I want to get this out because I care about people.
Talk.
Because
Talk,
thank
talk,
you,
talk.
brother. You're awesome. You are so awesome. I'm so
Thank you.
honored to be here. I want to tell people you do not want to take the mark. The mark is the sign that the only reason you will take the mark is because you don't understand the power and the truth behind the prophecies that warned you. And the God of the Bible says, you have utterly rejected me. If you don't know about this and you haven't, if you're not willing to reject this and trust me, you're rejecting me. And I will reject you. You don't want this. Nobody wants this. I don't want this for anybody. This is the most important thing in the world. And when you see the chemtrail jets and you see that picture of the jet that crashed, you see the Omega sign on the tail, instead of thinking about the mystery religions that they intended you to think about the Alpha and the Omega. Not just the Omega, which is the end, but the one who was everything, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. A couple more things I want to share real quick, and then maybe we can talk or whatever you want to do, Hans. I'm so thankful that you're patient with me and letting me just
No problem.
just
No problem. It's
explode all this information out. But I so much people I so much want people to be aware of this. I want to talk. I would just throw a couple things that were in my notes out here real quick. I lived in Jamestown, New York. I love the town. I would like to live the rest of my life there, but I can't because they're spraying so heavy
yeah, you can't
that
stand
I
it.
can literally not take it. I was limping when I left there. I had several episodes that felt like heart attacks, and that's why I left suddenly. And I came here where they're spraying, but they're spraying much less. Well, lately, not so much less, but still less. In Jamestown, in my yard, a very interesting thing happened. Wild strawberries were growing all over the yard. And I thought it was cool. I was just kind of amazed, and they're little miniature strawberries. Now, this weekend, I don't know if people know who Werner Bach is. Werner Bach, now a co-host of Republic Broadcasting. He has his own show co-hosting with another person. He's been around for many years. He's a farmer in New Brunswick, Canada. He's had his farm animals. A lot of them have been what is the word I'm looking for? When they cut them like with razor precision and they remove organs, and that's happened to him for years. And he started exposing it and researching it to the local government, and then he ended up being harassed by the local government. Well, he called me this weekend. I've talked to him before, but he called me and we talked for 2 hours. And he told me, and I love how this information just comes, and we're able to put the pieces together. I didn't even mention this to him. He brought it up. He said, if you have lawn that is growing lots of wild strawberries are how they used to tell in the old days that the soil is extremely acidic. And what makes the soil acidic? Well, sulfur dioxides, heavy metals, right? Other metals, aluminum. Guess what? Jamestown, New York, has its own power plant. And my house was about 1 mile directly downwind of the smokestacks. Guess what? That power plant emits between 200 to 300 pounds, if I remember my statistics right, because I researched it, of mercury. The mercury's bound up to other things, but it's mercury nonetheless, and other heavy metals every year, and this has been there for a long time. So he says when you see those wild strawberries, you know you've got acidic soil. This is what sulfur dioxide does to soil. What is one of the components that they're spraying in chemtrails? This is in their literature, not me saying this, it's what they say, sulfur. If you go to the global Skywatch website, globalskywatch.com, and click in the menu personal chemtrail stories, and go to my story. I have an article there that shows you different chemtrail types that I smell and taste. Chemtrails have different smells and tastes. The first one I smelled and tasted in Jamestown back in 2005 was salty metallic, and they used that one a lot, and they slowly phased it out and started using other types. Well, one of the types, which is the most commonly detected by people, I've gotten phone calls and emails from people, and people on Facebook have talked to me about this, is sulfur. They will smell sulfur in the air, and they're saying, where's this coming from? It's everywhere. I drove 20 miles, and it's the entire way I smell sulfur. One of the components that they're spraying is sulfur, because it's supposed to be one of the components used in geoengineering that helps remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through a process. So I smell it sometimes too. It's not one of the most common types. It's only maybe a couple times a month they do it here. But nevertheless, it's one of the things that they're spraying. So if we're having acidic soil, one of the other things they're spraying is aluminum, combined with sulfur, can really cause soil problems. That's one of the things I wanted to cover. I also want to talk about sundowning. Sundowning is a something that happens with elderly people who feel better for a while and then they get worse. I have talked to people this past year. Different people call me. One lady called me from the Carolinas. Her mother was declining and had all the symptoms of mercury poisoning. Just suddenly started declining, was doing fine and declining, saw my article and called me. Guess what? Dentures. She had dentures put in her mother, and within days, she started becoming forgetful. She started having health problems. She started having mental problems. And finally, the woman called me, and I pointed out to her that some dentures, according to Dr. Hal Huggins, and it may be all dentures, I don't know, but according to Dr. Hal Huggins, the red coloring in dentures is cinnabar, the red ore of mercury. And all those mercury symptoms can be caused by that. So that's something I really, again, I care about people. If you have a relative who has dentures and they're having ringing in the ears, dementia, schizophrenia, joint problems, arthritis, any number. I mean, mercury is literally, according to Dr. Hal Huggins, and I verified this by my own research, 200 of the most common diseases today can be directly attributed to mercury. It probably, in my opinion, is, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not making any claims, but in my personal research, it's the single largest cause of disease in the world. It's not the only cause of disease. And even things like acne. What happened to me when I was a kid? I get amalgam fillings in my mouth, and I got terrible acne when I was very young. Well, guess what happens? In people who are high testosterone, which I am, mercury raises dihydrotestosterone levels. Your dihydrotestosterone levels causes your oil glands to go crazy, and your skin gets oily. It also, mercury suppresses your immune system so that viruses and bacteria can start to flourish. This can cause ulcers, okay? And I ended up having a bleeding duodenal ulcer because it's viral, because your immune system can't get rid of it when you're under the influence of mercury. And acne. So what happens is we've been told by the media to blame acne, your teenagers being defiant, grumpy, depressed, sleeping all day, not doing well in school, and the media has told us it's hormones. Well, guess what? You just put amalgam fillings in their mouth. You just had them vaccinated, and now their personality is starting to change. Do you think there's a connection? I want people to know this so that they can do their research before they make decisions, not only for themselves, but for their children or even for their older relatives. Now, I think I'm coming to the end of my book that I wrote to share with the audience of Hans. I want to just scan through this and see if well, there's quite a few things, but I just feel like I've just gone crazy here, sharing all this information, which is exactly what I was hoping to be able to do. And I love Hans for that, because he lets his guests just have the floor and share all the info. I want to get the info out because Hans wants to help people. That's why he does this show. He stays awake at night. He spends long hours doing video editing, getting his computer and software installed and maintaining his computer.
Cool.
And his stuff takes time. And yeah, look, time and effort. And he does it because he cares about people. I do what I do because I care about people. I care about the world. It doesn't have to be this way. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
In the prophecies of the Bible that I've talked about, these prophecies say what is going to happen, and people need to know. Isn't it interesting that HARP, this HARP and all of these technologies. In fact, this is absolutely vital that I share this. Well, I won't go much longer, but I do about the CFL light bulbs, the compact fluorescent light bulbs. Mm-hmm. We actually did a little study. I want everybody to see this. We actually took a fluorescent light bulb and we broke it in a plastic bag and took a mercury vapor reading in the bag. We took a green fluorescent light bulb. It's one that has a little green cap on the end that says it's low mercury, okay, because fluorescent bulbs have mercury. We broke it in the bag and we took a mercury vapor meter reading. We took a compact fluorescent bulb, did the same thing. We took an incandescent bulb, and did the same thing. We have a video. We made a video of this.
Okay.
You can find it on our website on orbisvitae.com. It's ORBIS, Orbis, like orbit, Orbis Vitae, VITAE.com. Go into the forum, go to the Secret News forum, and you'll see the CFL video there. And you can see, I won't tell people what the results were, but you can see we took multiple readings of all those bulbs, and we also referenced the state of Maine did a study where they broke light bulbs in a room, like a little living room size room, and they measured the mercury in the room. And I'll just give away one spoiler here in the video, is that according to that study, and our mercury readings confirm this, that this is possible. If you break a CFL light bulb in a regular living room and you clean it up, the mercury emitted at the point of the breakage after the cleanup can be higher than 50 micrograms per cubic meter. Well, guess what? One of the large organizations, it's the American Safety Research Institute, I can't remember the name of it, ATSDR, the American Safety, I can't remember it's the ATSDR, which sets mercury limits. Guess what their limit is for a factory mercury vapor? 50 micrograms. So even in the main study, and this is all in that video, so I hope people go watch, we show where if you break a CFL bulb in a room, if you close your windows, you're in a dirty factory that could, well, that you're going to become mercury toxic. So very, very serious. People need to know about this. CFL light bulbs should never have been made. Exactly. I believe it's another ploy to make more people sick. And once again, they're using the staff of mercury. The symbol of modern medicine is the staff of mercury. They love mercury. It's hard to detect. Doctors have been mistaught how to diagnose it. They do blood tests, and blood tests are useless for it, but they love to spread mercury. So that's one thing about those CFL bulbs. People need to watch that video and be educated so you can protect yourself from them. That's what, that's what the mystery schools do. Yeah. You are cattle to them. And even when you get inducted into the lower levels, they lie to you about the symbology. Yeah. You gotta watch. I could go on and talk for days, but people have to watch William Cooper. Go to Orbis Vitae homepage, orbisvitae.com, and look at William Cooper's Mystery Babylon. There's 42 series. Every American needs to watch this. Watch, a couple every week, and before you know it, you'll have seen them all, and your view of the world will be different. It's a little bit scary. It's a little scary, but don't be afraid of it. Being educated gives you the power to protect yourself. So really hope that people will do that. And there's a couple other things, Hans, that I was kind of going on here is things that I want people to understand is that a lot of people look at the Bible, for instance, as being very antiquated. I shared some scriptures that talk about the mark of the beast. I talking about the genealogies of Christ, how they're the numerology, the first sentence. There's a couple other interesting things I want to share. Again, I could go on and on. It's just incredible what I have found over the years, that if people knew this, they would go, why didn't anybody ever tell me this? It's because you have been sheltered from this information, and the Bible has been slandered. One thing is it talks about in the end days, their arrows. If you actually look up, it says the arrows that will be fired will not return void. I'm paraphrasing. The word arrows is actually the word missile. If you look it up, it means a flying object, a missile. So it says that during these wars, during these conflicts, and the end times, the missiles will have, and there's a word there, a Greek word, and they will not return void. Now, the phrase not return void means that they're going to get the job done. They're going to do what they were meant to do. That's just an idiom that means that. But the word that I didn't tell you what it was yet, it says the missiles have, and the Greek word means comprehension. During the wars of the end, shortly before the return of the Messiah, the missiles that are used in the wars will have comprehension, and they will not return void. They won't miss their targets. What does that mean? They have computers.
Of course.
They self-correct along their course. This is a very interesting prophecy. There's another prophecy about the wars of the end times, and Daniel cried. I mean, some of these prophets who saw the visions of the end time, they went into depressions. They hid themselves and cried. It was so horrible, the things that they saw. And so the prophecies are always, they don't have to be as bad. They can be buffered if we're willing to wake up. And I want people to wake up. Here's one of the terrible things that happens during these wars, is that the weapons are able to cause this. It says their eyes will dissolve in their sockets and their tongues will dissolve in their mouths. What happens when you're in the explosion of a nuclear bomb? It dissolves. You can dissolve. You can be so intense that it can hurt you. It can dissolve. It can fulfill these things. When in history have there ever been weapons that can do this? Also, another thing is the Bible talks about God not liking GMOs, and I know that sounds funny to people, but it talks about the beginning when the seeds were mixed. Okay, they started mixing the seeds. They started enjoining. They started doing things with the seeds, and that was a point of contention. Don't mess with it. Why does he care about the purity of the seeds? Because he cares about you, and he knows that those people who mess up the seeds are poisoning your food, and will hurt you. And he does not want that. It's just like I talked about the word sorcery earlier on. The word sorcery meaning the word pharmakia, the drugs. Those, you know what the penalty for those who practice sorcery was in the Old Testament? Those who did, it was death. Why do you think it's so severe? Because those people are murderers. They're killing people. Let me read. Do you know that in the Journal of the American Medical Society, it's, in fact, let me look up the statistics so I get it exactly right. It talks about how many people die from pharmaceuticals every year. Let me look this up right here. I have it in a post on Orbis Vitae, which I hope people will go to and check. Okay, let me read this to you. This is JAMA 1977, section 2774301.
Okay.
Drug-related morbidity and mortality have been estimated to cost more than $136 billion a year in the United States. This is doctor-prescribed drugs costing $136 billion a year in the United States alone. These estimates, this is from JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, these estimates are higher than the total cost of cardiovascular care or diabetes care in the United States. A major component cost is adverse drug reactions. They're called ADEs. In addition, ADEs may account for up to 140,000 deaths annually in the United States. Okay, doctor prescribed drugs, 140,000 deaths in the United States alone every year from doctor prescribed drugs. Well, guess what? Less than 2%, this is commonly believed by nurses and doctors, that less than 2% of adverse drug effects or reactions are reported as such. When people go in for a heart attack, they give them drugs, and they die of a heart attack. They say, oh, it wasn't the drug that it wasn't the drug. It wasn't the drug, it wasn't the drug, it was a natural death. Less than 2%, it's commonly believed, are actually reported as adverse drug reactions. So if you do the math, that actually means in the actual number of adverse drug reactions is, you ready for this? 2.8 million per year in the United States alone from doctor prescribed drugs. It is there's nothing else that compares. And this is from JAMA. Okay. Now, of course, they say up to 140,000 deaths. So that's what they're admitting to, and they're saying, well, it's up to that. It won't be. So you know, you can toy with it a little bit if you want, but even if you toy with it, that is a huge, huge number.
Wow.
You know, one other thing I wanted to share was about the way people look at. You know, I talked about wanting to talk about the spiritual side of chemtrails, and we talked about the chemtrail jet that has Omega sign on the end, and how the Omega, I can't remember the phrase, but it's called the Omega protocol, or the Omega something, which is the code word for their god Lucifer, for the mystery schools. Whereas Alpha Omega is what Christ called himself, the beginning and the end. One thing that is very interesting about Scripture is it talks about Christ says, "I go to prepare a place for you, and where I go, and you cannot come. In my place there are many mansions." Well, that word, when he's referring to your body, when he's referring to the structures, it's an interesting Greek word called the word okaterion. Okay, this is the same word used in Genesis 6, where it talks about the fallen angels have left their first estate. A lot of people have heard about Nephilim, the angels that have fallen, that came and they mixed their DNA with man, and then they caused the giants of the earth. And this is something Genesis 6 in the Bible talks about. Well, here's something really fascinating. The word okaterion is the same word that's used when they said those fallen angels left their first estate. If you ever saw a movie years ago with the actor, what's the name? The real popular actor and the girl, the guy and the girl. It's in Los Angeles, City of Angels.
Of
I believe
course,
it's called.
Nicolas Cage.
Right.
Right.
And what's her name? I can't remember her name. That movie is about a fallen angel. It's an angel that leaves his body.
Melanie Griffith.
Melanie Griffith. Melanie Griffith.
Okay.
The fallen angel leaves his body because he falls in love with the girl. And it's just amazing to watch this symbology, because this is exactly what Genesis 6 talks about. These angels left their first estate. That word state is the Greek word okaterion, which is their body. They left their body. When you put this together and you understand the biblical picture of what life is here on earth, we are souls. We are spirit souls, okay, that live in a body. This is a machine.
Exactly.
It's a machine.
After 100 years or whatever, the body is dead, but the spirit continues. I mean, it's not like switch off the lights, you know, like Project Lights Out. It will continue.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is why the demons and the fallen angels hate mankind and want to deceive so much, because in Genesis 6, they left their first estate. They left their okaterion, which is that super body, that divinely made special body that can travel and do all kinds of amazing things. They left it because they wanted to come to earth. Okay? When Christ goes to prepare a place for you, it's the same word. He goes because we are going to receive an Okaterion, one of those super bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So what is our travel on Earth? Here's here's what it's all about. Here's what it's all about. We're here on Earth for 70 years, hopefully, or more.
Mm-hmm.
And let me use this example. You're an employer. I've had employees in the past before. What's the best way to know that your employer is faithful? To watch them when they think you're not looking.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't think you're looking and you watch them, you'll know exactly who they are. That's what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It goes a little deeper than that, but we're here for 70 years in a body, a temporary body. This body is to God, it's nothing. It's just like it was very good creation, but it's temporary. It's so that you can come here and make a decision. You're going to make a decision. And then when you leave, if you've made the right decision, you have shown the responsibility, the commitment, you have shown the love, you have shown that you believe what God wants you to believe, because you're humble, because you can accept that belief, because you can accept what Christ done for you, because you're not too proud, you're not too arrogant. Not like the mystery schools. Mystery schools promotes pride and arrogance. They appeal to your pride and arrogance. In this case, you're accepting a free gift, but you have to be willing to accept it. And it's amazing how many people are too proud to accept it. He wants the humble, those who are willing to love, those who are willing to be peaceable, good people, who believe that Christ is who he said he was. That is the test. That is the pivotal point. Those are the ones who get the Okaterion. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones who the employer's been watching secretly to see whether they're going to do the right thing or not. Yeah. Now, it's not like God doesn't know, because he knows. I believe it's in Ezekiel that talks about the host of heaven. God justifies himself by letting the host of heaven watch the people of earth, watch the people, so that they know that God is justified when he rewards some and doesn't reward others. Because now the host understands what God stands. Now those other ones who are already there understand that some men may appear very nice in public, but in private, they're evil. Or some politicians may look like they're wonderful and they're doing everything they can for you, but in private, they're taking bribes, they're killing people, they're doing horrible things. And so the host of heaven will look at God and say, you are justified. Now we understand why your judgment is so severe, because the evil in some of those people is so severe and so bad, it can't even be here. It can't even be in your presence. And so I want people to understand that from a biblical perspective, that's what it's all about. Making that decision, accepting that gift, having the humility to accept that gift. So I think, again, like I said, I can go on and on, but I think that
was great. Absolutely
that
great.
I hope that these things really help people. Is there anything that you want to talk about, or anybody who might have questions or anything that? And I'd love to tell people why 11. Why 11? There's a reason.
Exactly. So keep on watching. I'm back in one. We are back. We will be back. You know, like Arnold Schwarzenegger told us in Terminator. So we will be back. We'll be back. Okay.